Here's what a lot of hospitals do, right? I've had several whistleblowers come to me who I've written affidavits for me, who have done the show for me, who one of them actually is a dear friend who is now a lawyer as well because she's an overachiever. She goes, it's just in the emergency room. You tell the family this is, Dr. Joel Zivit talks about it too. It's called the double blind. This person's going to pass soon. We're going to increase their morphine. And as we increase their morphine, their heart rate, morphine up, heart rate down. Naturally, they'll just pass.
Microplastics are everywhere. It's everywhere we breathe. It's our food, it's our water. It's infiltrating every part of our lives. Scientists estimate we are consuming a credit card's worth every single week. One study found plastic particles in 100% of human lung samples. Basically, nobody is safe from exposure. It gets worse. These plastics don't just sit in your body. They cross the gut lining, leach into your blood, and disrupt everything. They've been shown to alter gut bacteria, suppress your immune response, and increase your risk for neurodegenerative disease, metabolic disorders, and cancer. Some plastic toxins like BPA mimic hormones, interfere with fertility, and damage your DNA. Even if you eat clean or avoid packaged foods, you're still being exposed. You can't opt out, but your gut can help you fight back. Kimchi One from Brightcore Nutrition is a potent ally in this toxic world. It's packed with over 900 probiotic strands unique to kimchi and proven to break down BPA, helping you detox from the inside out. It doesn't just support digestion, it helps protect your cells, your brain, your hormones, and your future. Your body was never designed to handle plastic, but your gut was designed to protect you. You just have to give it the right tools. Right now, you can get 25% off with my code SARAH at the link below. For even a better deal, call my friends at Brightcore and get up to 50% off and free shipping. That number is 888-495-8092. Great health starts in the gut, and we have to get these microplastics out of our body. And I recommend you try this today. Welcome to Business Game Changers. I'm Sarah Westall. I have Kelsi Sheren coming to the program. She is an expert on the MAID program. She is a former military combat veteran in Canada, and she spent a considerable amount of time working with veterans who are suicidal, are going through deep trauma and PTSD after being in the military. So she deeply understands suicide. And once she started looking into the MAID program, she became really concerned as to what was going on. She's actually a classical liberal as well. Not anymore, she says. Now she's like everybody else. She's who's in the middle is considered a far right nut job to these guys. No matter what you think on this issue, it's really important that you look at it from multiple different angles and get an understanding, big picture understanding, so that you're not manipulated. It's so much easier, and I say this during the show, it is so much easier to manipulate people than it is to inform them. And when you have full control of the media, like they do in Canada, manipulation becomes a piece of cake. What's hard is when you don't have full control and you get different voices giving people different information. My role and my goal is to inform people so they can critically think for themselves. I'm not here to think for people. I'm here to help you come to your own conclusions so that you have freedom. That's what it's about. I'm more about liberty. I'm not a hardcore libertarian. I'm not hardcore anything. But our whole country in the United States was built on liberty. We were really about freedom. So freedom, and this is where people get confused. You think of it as these rednecks in Montana or something, and nothing against people who live in Montana. I'm just using you as an example. You can use North Carolina, the mountains of North Carolina, or wherever you see people, whatever comes to your mind, the Texans, whatever. They try to make you think that freedom itself is bad. It's like, come on, guys. Freedom is the essence of what Jesus taught and what the classical liberals believed. It's about what freedom of speech is. It's what our country was founded on, was this notion of self-responsibility and freedom. And so my goal is for you to be able to take on that responsibility yourself and think for yourself, and then be able to understand and be able to see when you're being manipulated by the propaganda. And it is on full speed, and not just in Canada. Here in the United States, we are undergoing a color revolution. Online is like a battlefield. If you go on X, it's like a freaking war zone. And I would argue that it's a war zone everywhere online right now, but it is a wonderful place to get information that we never had before. But we have to mature as a body, as a society, civilization. We need to mature into these tools and understand it. The sad reality is too many people are affected by fear and they're shutting down their ability to think. If that's you, you need to check yourself and go, okay, if I'm feeling fearful right now, I need to slow down and say, I need to get out of this fear state before I make any decisions, because that's when you make the bad decisions. So before I get into this, I want to remind you that I have a protocol that really helps people with weight loss. I have lost over 25 pounds. I feel freaking great. I am reconstituting my muscle, which is another thing. I didn't just lose weight. I also am reconstituting my muscle, so my whole body is changing. You can do it through multiple means, but I have a whole peptide protocol that is called the Ultimate Peptide Guide on Weight Loss and Muscle Preservation. If you are interested in using what I have, I've been doing a few things, retatrutide, and I'm cycling between two other peptides for muscle preservation. If you're interested, I have my peptide guide below, and you can see exactly what I do. It's on my Substack. It's $8 to get it because I did it more than 30 days ago. You can use a one-time pass to be able to see it for free, and then you can also try this yourself. If you are going to be trying certain peptides, some of them are behind a wall, a VIP wall. You need to sign up as a VIP to even see them from my lab. I'll have a link below so that you can get in. You can sign up as a VIP. My lab is the best. It's made in the United States. It's really clean. They go through 3 independent analysis to make sure everything that they give you is clean. It's only the peptide. So I have those links below, or you can always go to sarahwestall.com under shop and see the most popular peptides there that I highly recommend. And I use a whole bunch of them, and I'm on this whole track to feel the best I humanly possibly can as I get older. And I feel like I feel better now than I did 5 years ago. And it works if you are dedicated and you are paying attention to what are the best, most useful ways to do it. Okay, let's get into this hardcore. It is, I'm going to warn you, we are not sugarcoating anything here. It's a pretty realistic conversation on a hard topic. So here is my conversation with Kelsi Sheren. Hi, Kelsi. Welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
So you're up in Canada. I can tell you kind of have a bunker there up in Canada. And you have emerged as one of the strongest voices speaking out against the MAID program.
Yeah.
Which is it's a sad thing. Let's talk about what it is. And
okay.
So people get an idea of what it is. And then I have a lot of different angles that I want to ask some questions about. But what is it? So people understand for real, in a very objective sort of way.
Okay. So if we're going to be very objective and we're going to be very uncomfortably honest, it is murder by your doctor. It's a poisoning by your doctor. It's poisoning through non-FDA approved medications that have never been tested for killing, that have never been tested for ending lives, mixed into a cocktail that in America you drink in a cup, and in Canada we inject into your veins.
No, hold on a second. Does the doctor inject it, or does the person inject it?
So it depends where you live. If you live in America, it's a cup like this that they pour poison into, and then they set the cup in front of you, and that's called physician-assisted suicide. And they give you the cup, and it is your job now to take responsibility, pick up that cup, and drink it. In Canada, what they do is they lie you down, and if you're in Ellen Weeb's office, the most prolific MAID killer in the world, what they do is they put 2 IVs in your arms, and then about 14 gauges, and they have a backup kit because often the kits fail, or your veins collapse because of so much fluid and poison going into your body that it goes into shock, and they push an exorbitant amount of poison into your body until your body shuts down. But first they use a paralytic drug in Canada. Okay, so in Canada the doctors physically do it, so it's not doctor assisted suicide, it's doctor suicide or it's doctor murder.
Yeah.
It's physician assisted suicide, and it doesn't have to be a doctor. It can be like an RN. So we do
But
have
they're
a
doing
weird,
it versus
yes,
here, the person is. So
yes,
they're actually
correct.
doing it
They're
versus
actually killing
here.
you.
Yeah. Versus
Yes,
here, you have to take the
yes,
responsibility for it.
there it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's your difference. And the reason that's an important distinction to make is because we understand suicide. So I've been in suicide prevention since my time overseas. And so that was '09. And I've been working in that space with my company, Brass and Unity, and several other nonprofits in America for a long time, trying to prevent people from ending their lives. We understand suicidality is an impulse most of the time. Sure, it could be long-term planned, but we do understand that suicide can be often done at night, in moments of crisis, when your brain is in fight or flight, when you cannot see past the next day, the next minute, or the next hour. So suicidality can be stopped. It's why for so long we did the 72-hour hold. I don't know if that's exactly what you guys use in America, but if I were to go into your emergency and say, I feel like I'm going to harm myself, they would hold you for 72 hours in a psych ward, do an evaluation, look at medication, look at how can we start helping this person. In Canada, we have had patients, especially in Vancouver, where I live, walk into hospitals, say, I am suicidal. I said this story on trigonometry. It was June, I believe, of 2023. We had a young girl go in to the hospital saying, I feel like I'm a danger to myself. The nurse sat down, put her hand on her lap and said, have you thought of MAID?
Jeez.
So it's a concerted effort now baked into our medical system as a cure. And it's no different than when we used to think lobotomies were a cure. It's the same way that Health Canada still offers to treatment resistant patients, because I am one of them, electroshock therapy instead of active psilocybin. So we are so far behind in what it means to genuinely care for the mind and the body that we now have resorted to, due to several different factors, euthanizing our country.
So I know people in Oregon, for example, who have, and they are advocates. I ask them, I try to talk to different people so I understand issues. And they're very adamant that this is putting the hands into the patient. And there's a lot of protocols in place so that.
There's not.
Well, that's what I've been
That's
told.
just a lie. That's a lie. Let me tell you why.
Okay.
Because if they were to take 2.5 seconds to look outside of Oregon, which, by the way, Oregon, Colorado, a few other places have already killed people who are not dying. So I don't want to hear that. When you have doctors picking up the phone to call you to give you this option instead of let you go through chemotherapy, that's not really an option. It's called lack of healthcare. So is it really healthcare if they can't look after you, give you palliative care, give you hospice, give you chemotherapy, give you actual treatment? And that's your only resort. Is that really healthcare looking after you? Or is that just making you or slightly coercing you? Or what about dying with dignity or compassion and choices in America, who show up at hospitals and nursing homes and show up in people's weakest moments and say, we're just going to dangle this carrot? Is that really healthcare? Is that really individual personal free will and choice? I would argue there's no chance in hell.
Well, I think that's what people need to realize. I just went through a really horrifying experience with my family, where they just didn't even do anything for my mom. And I think that's a situation where I could see, death through doing nothing is another thing, right?
Yes.
Is it more humane for death by letting somebody kill themselves versus death by doing nothing? I mean, I think we've moved to this stage where there really is a segment of our population in this country. We're going to talk about the MAID program, but in the United States, and there's a cognitive disconnect of people realizing that human beings are capable of being this way, because whenever there's a money incentive, money's always behind all this stuff. There's always some money thing where they don't want to spend the money. They think they're going to die anyways, or we don't want to give them better treatments because then it's going to expose, we're going to lose money on these expensive treatments. There's always some underlying reason why they're doing this, and it never comes down, and it's not everybody, right? And this is where the cognitive dissonance comes. It's not everybody, but there's a large enough situation where they're motivated by money to do in unethical things that most people would think is unheard of. So when people hear about this, there's a cognitive dissonance of there's no way they're doing this, but I've just witnessed it. of just, but mine wasn't assisted suicide. It was just total lack of care, doing
Yeah.
nothing. So now in Canada, you're seeing them actually doing, there was a elderly woman that changed her mind,
In
and they,
Ontario.
yes, and they did it anyways. And now how does
Oh,
that happen? How do you say, I don't want to die now, just let me, even what happened to my mom where they did nothing, that
mhm.
actually is, at least let her die that way versus now you're killing her. So what
Yeah.
happened? How does it get to the point where human beings are so adamant that they want to take someone's life?
Well, I mean, killing is killing is killing is killing. And some people like it and some people don't. And you're always going to have a psychopathy. You're always going to have the conversation around psychopathy, right? So, Dr. Christopher Lyon is a dear friend. He wrote an incredible paper. He's from York University. His father was taken with MAID. He's also a veteran in Canada. He's been fighting this issue. He wrote a paper called Healthcare Serial Killers. It's available on PubMed. You guys can read it. It's a peer reviewed paper. And it is incredible because it basically breaks down what you're discussing. How can a human being be so comfortable with ending lives when they took an oath to do no harm? And I've had this conversation several times. I'm a combat veteran. I've been overseas. I understand what it means to end lives, and not in a way that you necessarily are ready for when you go to war. You have an idea of it, but then to do it and see it is a very different conversation. It's no different than when I've spoken with doctors who have done one MAID procedure, felt sick to their stomach, and will never do it again. And then you have people like Ellen Wiebe and Stephanie Green and the new head of Alberta's public health system who have been killing for a decade. And not once in a while. Ellen has admitted to over 1,000 deaths herself at a Salt Spring Island event I attended myself. And so she's only admitted to 400 to the media, but I've been in the room when she's admitted to more. We've now known people she's ended lives of after one Zoom call being approved. So when we're looking at people who kill, this goes back to psychology 101 and, your very first degree in college. This goes down to, we have actual people who have reported euphoria after taking lives, erotic feelings after taking lives. Human beings are a very tricky thing. We have figured out that not all of our brains work the same. And some people are going to enjoy the God complex of what it means to end someone's life, to take their pain away. Those are what we call angels of death. That is what Ellen Wiebe is. She's a death angel. She enjoys it. She gets off on it. And when you hear her talk about it, whether it's in, she's done several documentaries now because she's quite proud of it. She's done Better Off Dead with Liz Carr. It's on the BBC. And you can see it. Her eyes, her pupils dilate. There are just things you look for when you're looking at people who enjoy violence and killing. And again, I've been around a lot of those people, and I got to tell you, there's people who like it and people who don't. And these people are so sick, they truly believe they're helping. Now, the conversation around, what does it mean to end a life by giving somebody a cup of poison and letting them take their own responsibility versus removing responsibility and injecting them to death. It is no different than lethal injection, so let's be very clear about that. Dr. Joel Zivit went and testified in Canada in the Senate. I spoke about this on Jordan Peterson, where he did the very first post-mortem autopsy on lethal injection patients from America. He is a critical care doctor at Emory State University, as well as an anesthesiologist, and he took a look at why the drug sodium thiopental was going missing. And it was because it was used for anesthesia, but then they started using it in lethal injection patients, and in the EU, that makes it illegal. So they removed the drug. And it made him think, well, why would it be missing? Well, what's going on with this? Well, the drug that was being used was causing lungs are what are called heavy lungs. So they were doing a postmortem autopsy, and over 80% of the patients that were injected with lethal injection through the prison systems were showing signs of heavy lungs and a pulmonary edema during the actual procedure, meaning their lungs were exploding and they were drowning to death in their own fluid. So what Canada does, what America does, is the same. The worst part about Canada is we do coerce you. We do have a ton of cases. Speaking of that 80-year-old woman in Ontario. Now again, goes back to, this is a case of the healthcare system said no to palliative care. They said no to hospice. Now, these are supposed to be the two 50-year sciences that help you pass peacefully with medication and loved ones around you.
It should never be a no. That should never be a no.
The Canadian government has defunded almost every single palliative care facility, including Delta Hospice, about 30 minutes from me. They removed her funding because she refused to kill.
So hold on a second. So
yeah.
For cancer patients or people who are legitimately needing to have hospice care, they removed most of those services?
They have removed a significant amount of funding if you do not provide MAID in those facilities.
Wow. Okay. Oh, yeah. If you don't provide MAID. Okay. So now if somebody doesn't, if someone says they don't want MAID, they still provide hospice care. It's only if they don't provide MAID in the facility.
Not necessarily. This is a great case. So this 80-year-old woman, this is, by the way, this is not the only case. This is just the one that stuck out in the coroner reports. There's over 400 non-compliant deaths alone in that province that we're speaking about right now. This is just one of them. So what happened is, she wanted it, and they denied her. They denied her palliative care and hospice.
She wanted hospice care, and they denied it.
And they denied it.
What would she do then? I mean, would just let the person suffer? Is it fraud because she has the insurance, and the insurance is deciding against it? Like, was there money going towards her care that should have went to hospice? I mean, do you know what I'm saying? Tax money or whatever?
No, her husband was looking after her full time. He was in his 80s. The reason she was euthanized was because her husband could no longer look after her.
Oh, so there was that. I always want to get to the money reason. There's always a money reason. And so
organs and healthcare costs.
That's what I mean. There's always a money reason. Okay, so the elderly aren't good for organs. They're good for reducing healthcare costs. The younger, they are
a bit of mix.
Can older organs be used? I know this is a really cold conversation, but I want to get to the money situation because it's always money, people. Yeah. Beside the psychopaths, right? We decide, okay, so there's the psychopaths who like get off on it, but regular society doesn't support psychopaths unless there's a money behind it. So those are useful tools for the money organization. Everything's about money. Okay, so can older people be used for organs?
Yeah, so the only thing that you cannot use during after the MAID murder is the heart and the lungs. So, and that has to be done in the hospital. So you have to die in order for them to take your organs, you have to die within the hospital, and they can still take your liver, your kidneys, your eyes, your skin. Like there's still other bodily tissue that is more than readily available outside of your heart and your lungs.
But do elderly organs perform like younger people organs? I know this is a cold conversation.
No, but not for me. This is everyday conversation for me, honey.
This is reality.
Yeah, this is just what I've been in for a lot of years now. So it doesn't faze me the same way it might faze the listener. So I do apologize if I seem callous. This is just every day, all day for me. There's an argument to be made around whether the elderly organs are efficient for maybe a transplant or they're efficient for science.
Okay,
right?
So there's one or the other
going to have.
Okay, so if they don't go for transplant, which is a lot of money, I just did a show where people are paying over $2 million internationally to get these organs, and they're bypassing people who need the organs, and like 30% of the people are being killed alive. This isn't even part of the MAID program. These are people they think are dead or they overdose, and they even try to convince people I have a crazy story I just aired. But the reality is that for elderly, people think, well, elderly can't be used. They can be for science, or some organs actually are pretty effective until like past your 120 years, right? Not all organs age like other organs do.
And you also are going to always have a black market. And we have to be honest about that, right? Marina Van Zeller has a show, and she discusses, organs and things like that, and how they can be used not just for, we're going to get really graphic, but, there's an entire place on Marketplace where you can buy brains, you can buy pens with brains in them, you can buy skin wallets, you can buy horrific things.
Oh my God.
There's a black market for everything. So there's that issue. We had the example of the Canadian heart going down to an American transplant recipient, which was wild. And that's why you can go to China and you can schedule a surgery because, that's what the Uyghurs and the concentration camps are for, right? You just take them.
Falun Gong was
yeah. So, and then you also have like the brain dead, the brain dead term is changing, right? So there is a lot of conversations happening in the medical system right now that are allowing for organs to be taken in a lot easier of a manner and then utilized for things that maybe aren't necessarily what the average everyday person is used to hearing them being used for.
Okay, so the young people, I mean, have you seen a coordinated effort? I know older people are just as useful, but a coordinated effort, because there's a huge increase in younger people having this happen to them. Those organs are freaking
Yeah,
high.
money.
Yeah. And so have you uncovered with all your investigative research, is there a direct line with from the hospitals that are doing this to organs? I mean, like every
Of
single
course.
person that gets killed, their organs immediately when they sign this is a better question. When they sign off to be part of the MAID program, are they
Yes.
automatically signing off for their organs to also be donated?
So that's a grayer area because I've seen it both ways. I've seen paperwork where it says you have to, and I've seen paperwork where it says it's not mandatory. So I'm not sure if that's hospital by hospital basis. I'm doing a big deep dive on organs right now because that is one of the biggest things that we are seeing is we're seeing a concerted effort from these groups like Dying with Dignity, Compassion, and Choices and the World Federation, who are all 80 different organizations across the globe who are speaking in lockstep, very similar to the WEF or the WHO, and the language that they are using to try to utilize change in legislation so that this could push forward into all of their governments. France actually is just working on right now stopping this from getting put into law, as well as the Slovacs have actually just stopped it from getting put into law as well. And so it's nice to see a few people with their heads on straight. But when it comes to organs, is the people that I do know that have been coerced into MAID and have been bullied into MAID and been given no other support other than MAID have all been asked to donate their organs. Now, those are personal stories of people who message me on Instagram, email my companies and say, I was told that I could have MAID, but I need to donate my organs. So I've only seen two documents. Both of them are conflicting. And I do know that the majority of people that have utilized MAID through family members who have reached out to me have donated their organs and they were told that they absolutely had to. Now, whether or not that is the standard of care, that is what I've seen in a mixed situations, but dollars are always going to be at the bottom line of all of this. And a great example is to take a look at a few different papers. So even Health Canada's own report in 2021 alone, just by not providing palliative care and by providing MAID, they saved over $89 million alone in 1 year. And that was in 2021. And you have to be careful with that because in 2021 is when Track 2 came into law. And Track 2 is where you're seeing all of these people who are not terminally ill, not sick, not dying, all of a sudden qualifying to die. So this is where you're seeing these stories of like Keanu, the young boy who was 26 years old, who just died this December by the hands of Ellen Weeb in Vancouver, even though he had been told by multiple doctors in Ontario he does not qualify because he had diabetes and depression.
Jeez, that's so crazy.
He was killed.
Okay, so the savings in healthcare is enormous. Mm-hmm. You just identified that just in that 1 year, we're talking 89 million, but they could go, wow, this is a boon. We could save a lot more. And then the money that they're getting from the science and from the organs is massive too. So they're seeing this as a massive increase. Plus they get to depopulate some of the undesirable populations that they don't like. I mean, I'm being honest. This is really how they think. Okay, we get to depopulate the population we don't like. We get to save money on care, and then we get to make money on both science and organ donation. This is awesome, guys. Let's use these psychopaths to do it because they're key. We can blackmail them too because they're so easy to blackmail, and let's get them to do it. That's what they're doing. The only way to combat this kind of lucrative money trail where the incentives are so high is for good people to step up and say no.
Exactly. And part of the problem that we're seeing in my country currently is that the option to say no is almost non-existent anymore. So everyone can say that MAID is a choice. I have been able to prove now over several years that it's not a choice if there is no health care. It's not a choice if Dying with Dignity, and I'm not exaggerating, calls you constantly. Or these programs at MAID House, which are just killing facilities, by the way, one in Victoria and one in Toronto. And they're just houses, like they're just buildings where all they do is kill people all day, every day. They're a nonprofit. They're called MAID House.
Is there a direct line to the science and organ trafficking in those houses? I bet you there is.
I bet you there is. They're a nonprofit. They're new buildings. Oh, trust me, I'm on it. These people have sent me cease and desist, lots of threats. and they know where I'm going. And as soon as I brought up organs on a few other different shows, that's when we started getting the bots and all of the attacks and all of these things. So the thing about organs that's fascinating too, we should pay attention to is, there's a province called Nova Scotia on the very far east side of Canada, and they have made everyone a presumed organ donor unless you opt out, where it used to be the other way around on your license, where you had to opt in to be an organ donor. And I'm not saying that people are never going to need organs, but here's what I am seeing is I'm seeing Health Canada, which is our National Health Association that's under our socialized healthcare. When I recently uncovered the past 3 months was Health Canada decided that they were going to sponsor the CanMap, which is Canadian Assessors of MAID Practitioners. They're basically the large conglomerate of doctors who kill, who go to conferences and talk about how they can kill more efficiently, how they can change more laws, how they can be more productive in death. And what they've done is they have started their own medical journal, and they're now teaching this. And so Health Canada sponsored the medical journal that's now going to teach all of the new students and all the new doctors and physicians in Canada. And right alongside of it, because they're dumb enough to put it on their website, in comes Canadian Blood Services, which is our plasma, our tissue, and our organs, who were also seen sponsoring the same MAID organization. So why is the government single-handedly sponsoring a organization and healthcare paper, which is very obviously going to lean one direction, which is killing as many people as possible. And then the same people who are responsible for all of our organs, our blood, our tissue, and our plasma also in bed with the same people. And when we put it out on Substack and we leaked it, all of a sudden it's no longer on their websites.
Just a short break from the program to share with you an amazing peptide to help you lose weight. It's stronger than Ozempic. And why? It's because it not only reduces your appetite, but it also burns fat. These other GLP-1s on the market, they do not burn fat. They just reduce your appetite. This one, retatrutide, is stronger. It's considered a next generation peptide because of that. And man, does this work. I've been using it for 2.5 weeks and I've already lost 11 pounds, and I cut my dose in half because I was losing weight too quickly. And that kind of freaked me out, to be honest. And so I also am taking this 5-amino 1MQ in capsule form. This helps by making sure that you lose fat, not muscle. And so in conjunction, I'm using both of these. This will work whether you have this or not. And I am telling you, it's amazing. If you are interested in getting this, I have the link below, or you can go to sarahwestall.com under shop. You can use the coupon code Sarah to save 10%. If you have questions about your own use, you should either consult your doctor or you can join Dr. Diane's tribe. And I have a link below to that. It is only $1 for the first week. You can ask her any question you want and get all your answers to this, how to take an injectable. And there shouldn't be any fear in doing that. It is easy and straightforward. Go to sarahwestall.com under shop or use the link below, and remember to use coupon code Sarah.
Well, good. Okay. Let me ask you some devil advocate question
Please.
on animals that are really being tortured. We think it's humane to put them down. Okay. And there is an argument to be made that human beings can be so tortured, right? We have to have this objective look. And so how do we weave this in? Because this is the argument, and I can't disagree with it. There are situations where human beings are going to die. They're in absolute misery, and there's other than being completely drugged up and not being able to see straight. And some people can argue that it's the more humane thing to do to allow them to die in those circumstances. And I can't argue that. It's like, well, I guess a human being, I'm a libertarian for the most part. I'm an extreme anarchist. I like people to have liberty and control over themselves. So there is an argument to be made that's reasonable. But how do you manage that argument and not keep this horrifying situation we just laid out from, becoming the norm?
Okay, so we'll go down a couple different roads with that. Okay. Number one, when we euthanize an animal, we're using pentobarbital. It stops their heart immediately. They don't feel anything.
Why can't you use that with people?
Great question. Doesn't make a lot of money when you're only using one drug,
Oh,
but it
for
makes a lot of money when
God's
you're using
sake.
4.
Okay.
So we understand pentobarbital.
Does it hurt your organs more or something? Is there more
pentobarbital, I'm
damage?
not sure the breakdown of how it works because we're not allowed to use it up here. We're not allowed to, it's just not a drug that we could utilize. But also in the same sentence, either are any of the drugs being used currently FDA approved for killing, but yet we're using them. So there's that, right? So we don't actually know. So that's one of the factors, right? So another example, I had dinner with, at Peter Attia's house with a few other podcasters, and I asked his wife who works in cardiology, I said, why not potassium chloride? She goes, great question. Why not? Why not fentanyl? Why not morphine?
Yeah, why not
It's called the
something
double
that just
blind.
takes them out?
Well, here's what a lot of hospitals do, right? I've had several whistleblowers come to me who I've written affidavits for me, who have done the show for me, who one of them actually is a dear friend who is now a lawyer as well because she's an overachiever. She goes, it's just in the emergency room. You tell the family, this is, Dr. Joel Zivit talks about it too. It's called the double blind. This person's going to pass soon. We're going to increase their morphine. And as we increase their morphine, their heart rate, morphine up, heart rate down. Naturally, they'll just pass.
Yeah, and they feel okay because the morphine, that's what happened to my mom when she had hospice care. They gave her the morphine and then she passed and then she wasn't, and it was, now I got to tell you, those hospice nurses were like angels on earth.
They are.
I was incredible. So the fact that people aren't able to get that at the end of their life and they're denied that is, I'm like, God, that's at a whole nother level. But beyond that, why aren't they doing that? I would wonder that there's the money thing with the 4 drugs that you're talking about, but I'm also wondering.
Sometimes it's 3 to 4, And then there's 2 kits per patient.
Oh, gosh, okay, so that's enough in and of itself for the motivation. Right. But I'm also wondering if it preserves the organs better or something as well. I mean, that's always underlying everything.
Well, a lot of it's, it's death by organ donation, right? So, they push enough drugs, but not enough to completely erode the body. And that's why if you do it in the hospital, you're taken fairly quickly so that your organs can go be removed. I've had patients, clients of mine who were blown up overseas and their brains physically don't look like they can communicate yet. They're functioning and doing quite well. They were told they were going to die and they're functioning, doing quite well. Those would have been the patients who were in comas, who would have had their bodies broken down to pieces because a doctor said, well, their eyelid didn't flinch when we did the test. Because brain dead is not a super scientific term. If you speak to anybody who assesses individuals, they've had people who have come back. They have had people who have come back who have said, I watched everything while I was in the room and you guys were going to pull the plug on me. So, we don't understand the in-between stage. Only anesthesiologists really do understand that because they know how to manage between life and death.
I don't even know if they understand it, but go ahead.
Well, they understand it to the best that we can without being on both sides of it. And so, I have a lot of friends in the practice of anesthesiology now, thanks to this research, who have come to me privately and been like, keep pushing. You have no idea what you're seeing. Like, this is so much worse than you can imagine. We've had patients wake up during the procedure. We've had patients come back. We've had, it's incredible. It's really bad.
Well, the other thing is that stroke victims in other like Russia, they give them peptides and certain, enzymes and things and proteins that help regenerate their brain right away.
Yes.
Right away.
Yeah.
In this country, we don't think your brain is capable of having, we are decades behind. This is the United States. I would think Canada's maybe worse.
We are.
And so we just don't value that. We think that they're done. But do we think they're done? That's where I'm like, maybe there's another motive here. They want them to be done. And so there's a reason they're keeping these, medicines and these treatments. It's not even medicine. These are
drugs.
Well, no, like the peptides. No, I'm saying the peptides.
Oh, peptides are great. No, they're fantastic.
They're regenerative tools. And there's some of the things that are even more than peptides that really help you develop your brain tissue.
Yeah.
But if you bring that into these hospitals and into these settings, you no longer have these organ donors. I mean, I'm so dark. The thing is that once you do this work for over a decade, I've been doing this for almost 15 years. I've seen so much now that almost everything gets painted as being dark when I know it's not all dark. And so I do think that there's a lot of people that can help us change this around, but it almost always is a money incentive. And so the most important thing is to say, hey, there's alternatives here where your brain can develop. You don't need to be a vegetable. You can actually help these people, but you got to do it right away. They don't even do anything, right? No. So what are you seeing as far as, Canada, my God, Mark Carney, the people in Canada are in a spell or something. They think that they're helping the poor people and the classes, right? They've gotten themselves convinced that they're helping the poor people, and it's a class struggle and racism and all these things. And they bring in a central banker who represents the wealthiest 0.00001% of the world to run the country. What kind of lunacy is that?
Well, let me just respond to the last part of that. Yes, I think that animals have the right to die. Do I think we should be euthanizing people? No. Let me finish that thought. Okay. That's what hospice and palliative care are for. I just had a whistleblowing nurse on who was essentially fired because she wouldn't kill people. And when you say you don't want to have them drugged up and in chaos, I've seen people in active dying. And when you manage their medication properly, they're up walking around. So it's not a you're for sure going to be in a coma and lethargic and drooling on yourself until you pass away. That's just not true. Also, there are plenty of different things that can help aid in individuals passing on to the next stage of humanity or into the rainbow bridge or whatever you believe in. And it's called psilocybin, but Canada blocks it. I'm one of the recipients of an outside clinical trial for Health Canada of active regulated psilocybin. I'm also a psychedelic integration and addiction specialist. And I will tell you that we have seen incredible results around end-of-life therapy when you utilize psychedelics like psilocybin for the brain as you are entering and exiting the world. So to say that it has to be this thing, I don't bite, doesn't do it for me. I've seen people bleed out with all their limbs missing their bodies and still want to fight for their lives. So, I don't agree that things can't be horrific enough. Yes, they can be, but nobody told you when you were born that your life would be devoid of suffering. That is the new narrative, that suffering does not exist. To exist in humanity means to feel all of what humans are supposed to feel, the good and the bad. And there's something to be learned in all of that. What you're teaching your grandchildren, your loved ones, and those around you as you are going through active suffering and how you are participating and trying to be positive and fight through is teaching the next generation and those around you something. And I think that when we tell people to quit on them, no matter what, I think that's where the slippery slope starts and that little seed is implanted. Now, Mark Carney, on the other hand, is a disaster all the way through. I was a liberal the majority of my life. Like the old school liberals. When I went to war, I was still fairly liberal until I think
liberal.
We had
It's
so classical. Yeah, just so classical liberal.
Thing. But it's
now
different.
I've been forced. Yeah, it's not even close to what it is now to me. No. Now I'm classified as a more middle conservative.
No, you're a far right nut job according to the left.
Oh, now I am. Yes, according to the world.
I'm sorry. If you're even remotely in the middle, you're a far right nut job.
I'm a nut job now. Yes. Gosh, yes. How dare I want freedom of speech? So Mark Carney is a real problematic human being in Canada for several reasons. I do believe that I don't know about the censorship, so I just go with my censored words. Schmovid time, at least for Canada, was a breeding ground and test for a psychological experiment on Canadians to see how far they could be pushed and how much they would give when it comes to their own culture and those people around them. And Canada failed miserably, horrifically so.
Yep.
And so when he came into power, nobody knew who he was. He's all over the Epstein list, if you've seen it. He's just as corrupt, just as messy.
He's a central banker. He's the one that came out and said that we're going to go around governments and use carbon credits to define budgets. And it was like a central banker's dictatorship. He did this in 2019 at the Jackson Hole, Wyoming meeting. Yep. He was the one who said that. But anyways, keep going.
No, that's my point is people have forgotten who this man actually said he was. He was also one of the individuals who supported freezing the bank accounts of Canadians who donated more than $25 to the trucker protests. He literally bankrupted people close to me who had single moms who donated $20 to try to help the protest. He's done some pretty horrific things, him and Chrystia Freeland, who has now escaped the country with $2.5 billion to Ukraine. And so when we have Canadians making decisions like this, you have to understand something about the way our politics work, which some fully don't. But the majority of the seats that are defining for our when we're doing a prime minister election are Ontario and Quebec. Pretty much everybody outside of that, it doesn't really make a huge dent unless it's in your individual riding, because we don't vote for the prime minister. We vote for the local person. So, for example, in my area, I voted for the Conservative last year. And that I had to vote for that person. I'm not voting for that prime minister. I have to vote for that individual, and the amount of seats that is given to that riding is then goes towards who's going to be prime minister. Nobody really knew about Mark. Nobody really knew what his deal was or what he was into, other than he was a central banker and he was problematic. Now, Mark has done a really, really good job of turning on the liberal propaganda in a way that we have never seen before. And in the past, last year, we had the government only sat for 72 days, and that was the lowest since 1937. So for us to sit there and think that this government is doing anything productive, well, they're not. The only bills that they've brought forward to put through are censorship bills, gun buyback bills. They are changing of the way we're allowed to speak online. We even have new bills that go as far as to say that they can turn our internet service and our phone service off, not tell us, not give us an excuse, and we have no right to know why.
And the Canadians are for this overall? Well, I mean, are they just
the liberal Canadians? They're so drunk. I believe they're suffering from
a spell.
It's Stockholm syndrome. I'm not exaggerating. I'm not being facetious at all. It's Stockholm syndrome. And then it is because our media is directly paid for by the tune of billions of dollars, which is CBC, CTV, Global News. All of those are what the boomers are watching. And those are the ones that are spewing the messaging that conservatives are wrong, that Donald Trump is a danger to Canada, that he's going to invade, that he's going to cause these problems.
It's our NPR. It's
exactly
funded by the actual government. And he comes in. Now, do you think your elections are legit?
I've never thought that election was legit. And I hate people say, well, Kelsi, that will legitimize your stance when it comes to other subjects. And I say, well, why is it that ballot boxes are allowed to be brought home in Canada? Why is it that when I did go to several different locations, they were only giving pencils? Why is it when I asked to use the Sharpie, they said no? There's just too much. And this is, people could say, well, that's conspiratorial. I don't care anymore at this point. I know how easy it is to manipulate a population. I've seen it. I was in Afghanistan. We were taught tactics, and it's called fear. And that's what we did. We gave everyone, for us, Schmovid didn't end in 2022. It came, and it's still, people are walking around paranoid with masks. People are still getting boosters to this day. I know people who have had 7 and 8 boosters. And I sit there.
Are they sick?
No, they're not. They're preventative because Mark Carney told them they should go get them.
No, but I mean, are they
mentally unwell?
No. Are they physically unwell getting 8 boosters? So maybe.
Oh yeah. They look like death. They're like sheer. They're constantly wearing masks. They don't go outside. They don't go anywhere. And they're fearful of their own shadow. And that's not exaggerating. We have broken us, like psychologically, we have broken a portion of our population, and we have force them into an ideology around compelled speech, DEI, around the medical narratives. And now we have these people who used to be trust the science, show me your papers, now saying, well, everyone else is crazy because how dare we want to have X in our population, Dixon. She was it Ariane Dixon. What the fuck is her name?
Cynthia?
She used to be on this show called Dragon's Den. She used to be an important person. She's basically very wealthy. She invests in a lot of companies. Arlene Dixon. Anyway, the reason I'm bringing her up is she just recently, who was supposed to be some big, huge Canada first kind of person, was like, I can't wait for them to ban X in Canada. And my thought here is how sick and twisted can you be to want to partner with the Chinese Communist Party, number one, back away from the largest superpower in the world who's on our border, And then accept ideas like MAID for anybody, which, by the way, we're about to hit our 100,000th death this spring since 2016. And then say things like we shouldn't have the right to speak online. You can't tell me that is not the communist starter kit. I come from Hungary. My grandfather fled Hungary when the Soviets came in. And he came to Ontario and he worked at a shoe factory. He did not speak English and he learned and assimilated to Canada. And Canada has broken the nation in the past 10 years since we had the Trudeaus in. And it has never been the same since. And frankly, I don't think it can ever go back. And that is the concern.
It can go back.
It won't. Everything because we're not getting.
Well,
Pierre's
no, but
not getting in.
Yeah, no, but everything can. I mean, Soviet Union. If you look over there, that broke apart. Russia's in a much better place than they were before. Everything can cycle and go back. Eventually, it might take a century. It might take more, but eventually it can. But it seems what's happening is they really had the Civil War, the revolution's strategy figured out. They knew how to do that. They knew how to propagandize a state, a country into civil war and revolution. And all they did is turn it on us, is what's happening.
Yes.
And we are in the midst of this chaos operation, color revolution but Canada is and it might be, and people talk to me about it, it's because you guys don't have the underlying constitution. So you're a little bit more easy to manipulate because your media is more encompassing, all encompassing. We have more media that is really important in this war. We have more voices that are being able to be heard, that are saying, wait a minute, whoa, let's slow down here. That you guys were in the middle of a color revolution. In Canada, those voices are more silenced.
They are. And like, for example, I've had my show, The Kelsi Sheren Perspective, for almost 6 years. And what I'll tell you is we just got unbanned by YouTube this year. So we've had strikes every year that we've existed. And part of the problem is we have what's called the tall poppy syndrome, where Canadians don't love when one person starts to stick up. It just doesn't work. They will cut you down as quickly as possible, or you just leave. Take Jordan Peterson was a great example of that, from Toronto, not too far from me. And Jordan left the country. And anybody I know who's doing anything, if they want to be successful in it, does it in America. I leave and go to America once every other month to go do shows. I don't do shows in Canada very often for a reason. They get banned, they get censored. There are a bunch of really good media groups in Canada, but unless you are more of a conservative individual, you're not really watching those. We don't have a more centrist, balanced version. We don't have a CNN and a Fox. We don't have this kind of left and this right idea. We have podcasters, and podcasters are what are breaking the mold in Canada. But that's only until Bill C-11 and all these other new bills, Bill 63, Bill C-9, all of these come into place. And they're trying to shut
you all down. So only government sponsored media. I had someone from one of your big networks reach out to me wanting to do an interview with me. And I said, I ended up not doing it. And she reached out to me 3 times and said, I don't want my information controlled. I want you to be able to think for yourself and do it. She's like, no, we're independent. And I just didn't believe her. So I didn't do it. But she was adamant, and they kept going after me. And it was a period of about 3 months. They kept reaching out, wanting to do an interview, and I didn't do it. But that's how I think, do the people inside actually think they're independent?
It depends. It depends on it. I don't know who you're speaking about, so I could tell you if they're actually independent or not. But if it's CBC, CTV, Global News, National Post.
I think it was CBC. It was. I
believe. They're the worst.
It was them. But so is it even possible that or is it just the line they give people?
No, it's the line they give because they have to seem bipartisan. Otherwise, who's going to participate with them? I spoke a lot when my company was kind of booming pre-Schmovid time, when, we used to have retailers and things like that. And I used to do a lot of media. CBC was one of the biggest ones we did at the time. And, during the Afghanistan pullout, I got hyper involved in removing a bunch of Canadian visa holders back to Canada using Americans, because Canada abandoned them and turned off the IRGC websites, so nobody could actually get a hold of anyone for help. And they called us and they said, look, we are doing a story on combat veterans and how they feel about the Afghan pullout currently going on. And I remember I was in the middle of the cycle of not sleeping and getting on the phone and being on Signal and doing all these things. And I was so irritated by the question. I said, so what? So you can gaslight a bunch of veterans who have PTSD on national television to what? Make us sound more crazy? They called us the next day and said that Trudeau had put a media blackout on any questions, any media Afghan related, because we were abandoning over 3,000 Canadian visa holders in the country. So
the only way to control it is to black it out. They do a complete blackout. And you used to think that third world countries were big, because I know in third world countries they would, and I've dealt with this, where they have bought up every single newspaper in the country if there's a bad story, so nobody can get hold of it. And then they threaten the newspaper to make sure they don't cover it again. That's a common tactic. But in this country, or in Canada, even that is better, because then they can, at least different outlets can still do it. But in Canada, the government just came in and blacked it all out. People don't realize how bad this is right now.
I think what's disturbing to me, being somebody, so my husband's American, thank God, and I'm Canadian, and so we at least have an exit strategy for me before they decide to put me in prison, is to be, and that's not a joke, is to be very honest. No, it's very serious. It's to be very honest about where we are as a country. If people want to believe that people like myself and other creators and other investigative journalists and other independents, heads are not on a list, you're out of your mind. You're delusional. Canada is not messing around here. We had the CCP on our shores in 2020, training their military at Connaught Range in Ottawa, training their military on Salt Spring Islands.
You have an agreement for them to protect their own resources. And so the CCP is in there. Their military is in there. Reported on it. Keep going.
Yeah, and people think I was crazy saying that. And then
you actually have a legislative agreement.
We actually do.
Yeah.
And we also had CCP police stations that were intimidating Chinese dissenters who left. So to think that is not embedded in the ideology of where our government is going and how they feel about independent reporters is delusional at best. And that's not some grandiose idea I have of myself saying that I'm something special. This is not just me. There are a ton of us that are doing this type of work in different factions, different ways, YouTube, Instagram, there's a ton. But what I will say is that Canada is in a place that I never thought I would see it. There's iron curtains all across the globe on internet censorship. It goes Russia, North Korea, and China, and now Canada. And so when people in America are like, Kelsi, your healthcare is great, but you don't go bankrupt when you get a surgery. I said, where do you think I go for all my healthcare? America. I don't go to Canada. You'll die on a wait list with over 20,000 dying per year right now. We have over 500,000 people per year, almost at 1 million now last year, who left waiting rooms without getting care. You can't get a family doctor. And sure, I won't go bankrupt, but I'll definitely die. So
who cares? Why do I want the only freedom that you get? And I was saying this to my husband lately a lot. Based on our situation, the only people who are free are the ones who can actually pay for their own health care, because otherwise you're going to get crap health care. And I don't think America's the best in a lot of things either. That's not why our RFKG, if you look at our charts, we're not doing, I think, healthcare tourism is a real thing, because different places in the world are better than others. And if you got the money, the only people who are free when it comes to your own health are the ones who have the money to pay for it. And I'm sorry. And I'm sorry, people, I have to say this cold truth, but it's true.
It is the truest statement. I mean, for us to go, we leave the country and get stem cells. For me to get, when I was getting help after overseas, it was American nonprofits, Defenders of Freedom, Boot Campaign, Heroic Hearts Project, who helped me, not Canada. Even though I was declared 100% disabled. It didn't matter. Canada didn't deem it accessible enough, or I needed the help enough. And so when we're looking at healthcare, when we're looking at expansions of where MAID is going and where Canada is going, we are going down and again, this is not to use the word lightly, authoritarianism is definitely it, tyranny is definitely it, but if we continue down this path, there is a real reality where Canada will fall into a more communist state. And it is going that way, but it is very important to reiterate, and I made sure to say this on InfoWars, but this is for Americans to pay attention to. You already have 12 states and 1 jurisdiction and a 13th about to legalize utilizing MAID. Now, the reason that's important is I've sat down and spoke with the United States State Department. I've spoken to a lot of individuals that deal with your legislation in America. And they had no idea these states were even doing this. Your states even have, like Oregon, you no longer require residency requirements to go. So if you're a Texan and you're a liberal and you believe in we wanting to end your life, you can go and do that. You have to be careful because you have people like Kenneth Law in Canada who are getting their hands on these MAID kits and selling them on Amazon, and people are being killed all across the world. So to think that this is not going to happen to you, it is already happening. There was an individual doctor in Hawaii was in the middle of killing somebody who said stop, and he kept going and was put in prison. There are cases all across everywhere. Colorado, a young girl who was struggling with anorexia, a doctor then created a new term called terminal anorexia, which, by the way, doesn't exist. You can heal from anorexia. And she got made it anyway.
Well, there's psychological issues, obviously.
Yes, but you're not terminal.
No.
It's, the loophole in Canada is this. So when your friends and your people say, but hun, they should have the right. And, they're dying. All you actually have to do to get on the terminal list is to say these words. Are you ready? I'm no longer eating or drinking. And you now become terminally ill in a foreseeable death. There's your loophole. So don't tell me there's safeguards. That's called delusion, because you can kill yourself by jumping off a bridge anytime. Or you can just say to your doctor, I have a physical ailment that's bad enough, and my secondary is a mental health, but not my first, because we don't actually start legally killing people in Canada for mental health on its own until March of 2027. But then we also have already started, and in Parliament and on Substack, I just put out, I think today or tomorrow, where you can see the AMAD report discussing mature minors, which actually doesn't have an age. By the way, it doesn't have an age. And we even have our own College of Physicians in 2022 in the National Post stating that we should be able to utilize MAID on children 0 to 1. Jeez. And Sick Kids Hospital, which is the children's hospital of our country.
How can you possibly do 0 to 1? Because they can't have any kind of cognitive understanding.
So what happens to informed consent, right?
Well, that's the post-birth abortion thing.
Yes, ma'am.
That's really what that is.
This isn't a Canada issue. Hawaii, California, Colorado, Delaware, Illinois, Montana, New Jersey, New Mexico, Oregon, Vermont, Washington, D.C., and Washington State, and now New York State is coming. You guys are doing it too, and you're expanding. And it's not just in blue. Montana Republicans all voted for this. And it's legalized in Montana. So this is not a right or a left. This is a human issue. Whether you believe it or not, people are okay with ending the lives of their loved ones because they don't want to deal with them. And you know how I know for a fact it's not immigrants doing it, which is crazy because we have flooded our country so much with them. 96% of the people who utilize MAID in Canada are white.
Well, yeah, for some reason, they're easier to be manipulated. It's easier, and I've been saying this, it's easier to manipulate people than it is to inform them. And so what's happened is the governments understand that, and they just like full-blown manipulation mode. We don't want to deal with informing people anymore. We're going to go the easy route, and that's what we're doing for all of our agendas. Period. And those of us who are like committed to informing people because it gives you back liberty, because I care about your freedom, though we're the ones being shut down because liberty and self-thinking critical skills is not what they want. And that is scary.
And my biggest point to this, and I wanted to talk to Dave Smith about this too, from the libertarian perspective. I just had Michael Malice on having this conversation. He's an anarchist, but having a little more of a conversation around MAID. I thought he would have taken a very different stance. Turns out he didn't. He goes, there's a right and a wrong. And when you understand how humans can be manipulated and coerced, and when you remove certain support networks and say, this is the only options you have, it's not really free will, is it? My question has always been, or I guess my point really has always been, nobody has ever said and this is where people think I'm quite callous, but this is just black and white for me. Nobody said you can't end your life. Nobody is stopping you. But what I am saying is you do not get to legislate it into healthcare as an option or the majority of the option for care. That's crazy. And you also don't get to use my taxpayer dollars to kill you.
Well,
and then you also don't get to legalize to kill children and then try to tell me that I'm crazy for not wanting a 12-year-old to be able to end their life just because you think it's okay for them to have their breast cut off. I don't think it's okay for them to even get a tattoo, let alone decide to have a doctor euthanize them.
Well, I would take it even further and say you don't get to use my tax money to propagandize them, to think that they're thinking differently, and then take away all the resources to get them to make a different decision. Exactly. Those two things, it's like, okay, I am for them being able to decide for themselves, but that takes being able to hear both sides and having resources on both sides, not giving them only one resource and actually forcing them in like a sheep, herding them through to that one decision because they're screwed if they did anything other than doing this. That is not okay.
And that's why I say this is not choice. This is coercion. This is manipulation. And when you have People Magazine bragging about it, when you have, People
Magazine bragging, what did they do?
Oh my God, they love to write stories about, the Leapfrog CEO. He went to Switzerland and had a beautiful trip and then ended his life. Amy Bloom, her husband, same thing. You also have Apple TV. I don't know if you ever saw the Today Show. They did a whole episode on Dignitas in Switzerland, even though one of the actors' mothers was, I don't know, maybe in her early 70s, totally fine, living on her own, very wealthy. And he found a pamphlet to talk about it. And then they had a show on Netflix called Mary Kills People about how it should be okay for your doctor to euthanize you. You have these propaganda placements that people are not understanding are being slow dripped. And they are. And it's this ideology. That's exactly what's happening. It's manipulation.
Very sad. And it's because there's a whole money. It always goes back to money,
honey.
Money and control. Well, how can people follow you?
Yeah. So if you like to hear this voice, then you can go to my YouTube, which is the Kelsi Sheren Perspective, or Spotify, Apple. We're everywhere. We've had, like I said, we're almost 6 years old now. We put out 5 episodes a week. If you like to read rather than hear my voice, I have a Substack as well, just under Kelsi Sheren, where I put all of the things I talk about on my show just in a written form. And then if you just like to see random points of me complaining about the internet, the globe, and what's going on in a more for fun, less heavy way, my Instagram is just Kelsi_Sheren. And that's where I do a lot of reaction videos and just things where I feel like I'm saying what everyone's thinking. I'm just the only one willing to say it out loud.
Well, thank you so much for joining the program today. Really appreciate it.